Hey guys, it's Aaron Gwinnett here from Defy Reality Entertainment. This video is kind of a shorter video of something that will probably go into more detail later on. I'm going to be focusing on the idea behind Neyyah, that it was more of a world before it became a game. So the idea that it was world first, then game later. And I'm just going to touch on a couple of points about how I changed that over time before the release, the reasons why, and I'll probably go into a couple of more videos into more of the details of whereabouts in the game those changes were made as well and why. But this video is just kind of a basic outline of how I perceived Neyyah and how for me it was more of a world rather than the game. So here we go. To start off with, Neyyah was just basically going to be a very small little introductory kind of demo of a much bigger game. Obviously Neyyah became pretty big in itself. So yeah, when I started Neyyah, it was just after coming out of a very long building a career in music. I was a singer-songwriter, acoustic singer-songwriter. I was a recording artist. I also had a studio where I recorded other people as well, and a music tuition business as well. So music was my thing. Obviously that went on into Neyyah as well. And any game that I was going to work on, you know, I would be doing music in. Like, I couldn't see myself not doing music. Obviously Zayden Turner helped out with the Neyyah soundtrack. He did an amazing job. But for me, music has always been a core part of, I guess you could say, part of my identity, you know. But as time has gone on, you realize, you know, as a creative person, the game that you create, the music that you create, the book that you write is not who you are. And, you know, you are many different things. With music, it was getting to a point where it wasn't really fulfilling me as much as it was, or how it used to, from I'd say 2012 throughout 2018. I was living out in Australia and I was performing as an artist, a singer-songwriter, acoustic, and I was performing, you know, I played in a couple of bands as well, but I was doing a lot of my own stuff, my own songs, then having to learn other songs as well and performing in different pubs and venues, and it just wasn't really doing it for me at that point until around that 2018 period. And you know, looking back, I was having so much fun, but it was being clouded by a lot of different things. And you know, I was advised that maybe I should get back into my game design, and that for me was a kind of a light bulb moment, and I didn't really look back after that. I had a couple of moments where I thought, wow, it'd be really cool to maybe touch upon some game design stuff. I had some like cool ideas, but they never really became anything that carried on. Music always came back in. 2010, 2011, I had the big sort of idea that I that helped create Neyyah. I used the backstory and the lore from this idea from back then, and this is all stuff that I really want to go into more detail about in my Arts and Inspirations book, which I'll be releasing early next year. But this video is just to sort of kind of touch upon more about the Neyyah world, and again, you know, how it became more of a world for me rather than the game. But I thought I'd give you a quick little intro here. Anyway, moving on. So basically, ideas came, but they were never finished. When I started a game back in 2018, it was around April time, it was all drawings. So many sketches, so many ideas that were flowing, and I was able to pull from this idea that I'd made back in 2011. It was called Portals, Journey to the Pearl Islands. And Adventure Game Geek has some footage over on his video that he did recently reviewing Neyyah, and the link is in the description of this video. Fantastic guy. I appreciate his work so much, and it's been so fun following his journey as well. And I hope to work with him a bit more down the track as well. But yeah, it's been a journey in itself creating Neyyah, especially from where it began, because once I came up with this project, I was going to use a software called Animator. And Animator was a very basic, easy to use kind of 3D modeling software, great for beginners, but it definitely didn't have the push and the power that Blender did. Blender came about for me just experimenting, and I looked up some tutorials and I saw what Blender was doing at the time. I used to see like Instagram videos come up, and I thought, wow, this looks amazing, this looks really cool. And I started getting into it, and I saw one of the render previews, and I thought, wow, this pre-rendered magic before me, it looks so much like Riven, like the original Riven. And I thought, yeah, okay, I've got something here. This is the avenue that I need to go down. And I didn't look back. And from that moment on is when Neyyah started forming. Now that's kind of a very long story condensed down. And again, I want to go into more detail about this kind of thing in the art book, especially the origins of Neyyah. And so yeah, it became a game of itself. It was going to be like a demo, but then because of Blender and the work that I started doing in Blender and the work that I started seeing things that I thought, wow, this is amazing. This is like, I could really push this idea even more and push this even more. And soon that little demo idea that I had of what originally was going to be called Save the Plant as the idea, the title I had right at the beginning, that became Neyyah. And I still remember being in Australia, in Western Australia, in my studio in Mandurah, and I thought, wow, okay, I've got this image here, and Neyyah came to me quite quickly, and I started working with the 2 Ys, and I started implementing the puzzles into the title. I think there's a lot of backstory behind Neyyah in itself. Obviously, there's a lot of lore, but that symbol of the 2 Ys and the dots and the underlying the Y, that really stuck out to me. It needed to be there in the title. That was just one of the moments. And from then on, the passion for me was always the world building. Developing the worlds, designing the worlds, being in Blender, sketching stuff in my sketchbook. What texture should this be? How should this model look? How many nails should this thing have? If it was metal, then it should be secured to to this wall here. And how many bolts should it have? Should this be wood? And a lot of those inspirations come to me, especially from places like Landguard Fort in England. There was a lot of early kind of inspirational trips that I did in Australia too, looking at how walkways, that kind of thing, catwalks, how everything looked. And so there was a definite mix in the end within Neyyah. But yeah, the big push for me was always being in that world, developing things in Blender, and I was lost in it. That was where the passion was for me. It was always building and building and building this world. One of the fun things about being lost in the world was that it wasn't so much a game for a very long time. I wasn't stuck coding things. I wasn't stuck in the engine doing this, doing that, and having screens of code in front of me. That really doesn't appeal to me at all. For me, the passion and the desire to create was always the art side. But being in Blender, being able to create something that looked so realistic, after rendering things and test rendering things and seeing all the beautiful textures come into life and the lighting and everything, that for me was the Neyyah drug. I was addicted to that, and I got really lost in it, and Neyyah became something so much bigger than I kind of expected it to be. But even in the early days, the sketches and stuff, and again, this is stuff that I'll be running through in my upcoming Arts and Inspirations book, and especially when I delve into each location of the game, is the way that everything was interlinked. So even though it became such a huge place, there had to be connections between all the different places, and reasons for that too. And I guess one of the big things for me as well was the Lord of the Rings inspirations as well. One thing I'd love to do in maybe another video is go through all the different names of all the characters, the places, the devices that you come across in Neyyah, and I'll pronounce them how they should be pronounced. I'll describe them, and I'll have like an image that will go with that as well. I think a video format would be really cool, and that will feature in the Arts and Inspirations book as well. Maybe even like a QR code or something that could be scanned when you buy that book, digital book. Maybe hard actual physical copies maybe down the track, who knows. But just being able to refer to a video that I do, so you can actually really get into the places, because I think that's one of the biggest things that's overwhelmed players when playing the game. But for me, that was the most exciting thing. It was making it different, making it unique, and yeah, having a name for certain devices just made sense. And for me, it's always felt like it was excavating a world rather than building a world as well. Like I was jumping into the pit, into the ground, and digging it up, and I was like, wow, look what I found. Like Tommyknockers, for example, when they find the spaceship in the forest, Stephen King's Tommyknockers. And for me, yeah, I was like uncovering this place, and I was going to expose it to the world. And I think one of the key things as well, like how I experienced developing Neyyah, you have to have a lot of patience. You don't know everything in the beginning, and the whole fun is the discovery. And if you don't go into it thinking on those lines, you're going to have a hard time coming across these different places, these different names, and why should these places have these names? Why should they not be more simple? Well, that's the world that you're in. You're in this world. You can't do anything about it. You're there to learn and discover. And that's the whole thing about Neyyah. So for me, it was very intentional to come across these names, to design these names for everything, because there was so much cool stuff that I was discovering. I think one of the most exciting things I remember building the harbour zone of Falitsu Island, and being in that area for so long, for like the whole summer of 2020, I was developing the harbour zone of Falitsu Island. There was so much detail going into that place. And yeah, of course, I look back in hindsight now, and I can see how things could have been sped up a little bit, how I could have sped things up. But at the same time, it was so fun just having all the time just to develop that place. And this is before I went with microprose as well, before I went full time. And so I think there is a lot to sort of think about and reflect on with that as well, because if you're not working to any deadlines, you have all the time in the world, but also that creates problems too. Sorry, just banged the mic there. But yeah, that it was always just feeling and building this world and being in that world. That was the most fun element of creating Neyyah. And yeah, of course, it was going to be a game, and there were going to be puzzles. But for me, the exploration, the world came first, before the game. Oh, but then it has to be a game, so changes had to be made. And these are some of the examples, which I'll be delving further into in other videos as well. But here we go. Because it was a world that people had lived in or were living in, there are certain devices, certain things that you could interact with. Right from the beginning, the design of the world, and even into the actual builds themselves. You could actually interact with things that had no purpose whatsoever to your mission, to what you are trying to achieve, your goal in the game. You're coming across things that people had used before, but they were no longer around, but they still existed. And for me, another thing as well is being able to access certain areas of the game. Right from the beginning, when I was doing, even from the early builds, you could access certain areas very quickly. Because for me, it wasn't about, oh, there should be a puzzle here to limit the player's ability to enter certain places. Oh, it should, we should have a certain amount of game time before they should get to this certain place. None of that really crossed my mind, and to be honest, none of it really appealed to me. In the real world, you don't have things blocking you. Yeah, if you lose your key or something to get to your car, yeah, you won't be able to get into your car. You might have to find the key that you've lost or find another means to get in. But being able to access certain areas shouldn't have to be cut off because of puzzle's sake. There should be a puzzle here. That didn't appeal to me, and with the way that obviously Neyyah came out, it made complete sense in the end to do that for a game. But it had to be mixed in with the world. Some of those elements of certain parts of the game where there are puzzles sort of at the beginning, they were added very last minute compared to the much broader, more non-linear open world elements of the game. So there were things that were considered, how can they be added, but they weren't in the original vision. And so Neyyah was going to be even bigger than it is in the game. It was going to be so much bigger. There were going to be other locations, and this is stuff that I definitely want to go into with the Arts and Inspirations book, is the places that never made it and why, and how certain places were condensed into other places, but also how certain areas would have been even bigger, but there were certain rendering and hardware limitations and stuff like that I ran into, mainly because of getting ahead of myself, because I had so much power behind these new computers that I had in rendering and stuff and modeling. I got carried away. So that's going to be really interesting to look into. But yeah, so outside of the world being a world, we then had to, myself and Micropros, for example, we had to then look at how we're going to make this challenging, engaging, and looking at certain areas of the game where there were going to be, okay, so where's the player within the 2 hours of gameplay? For me, I could never really measure how long this game was ever going to be, because it was so non-linear and it really depended on what path you're going to take. And it's incredibly fascinating seeing how the player now, after playing Neyyah, all the different paths that you can take. I've watched streams, I've jumped onto streams, I've been watching people play the game on YouTube, and it's really interesting because I'm like, oh, they're there, but they don't have their inventory item yet, or they don't have they've gone to this place but they do have the inventory item but they're missing this and that. And I think one of the biggest things as well was the amount of notes and journals and stuff within the game. This is stuff that I can definitely elaborate on more in hindsight, and how that could have been delivered in different ways rather than just notes and journals, because it became a headache for the localization as well, implementing everything there. But at the same time, though, this was the world that I was excavating. This was Neyyah. This was Neyyah. This is Neyyah. So it's down to kind of what you know at the time as a designer, I suppose, but what felt right as well. But there needed to be certain things put into the game that would Yeah, exactly. To put into the game, not the world, to make it more of a game, basically. But these are going to be pushed into other videos, like I said. So here's a couple of examples that were made less worldy and more gamey. So for example, at the beginning of the game, there's a portal that you can't access straight away. You have to be able to solve a color-based puzzle to get in. Not giving too much away here. This is trying to keep it as spoiler-free as possible. But there's obviously tons of playthroughs and stuff and walkthroughs and guides on YouTube and everything for people to watch. But that portal you could originally just go through. You could go through that portal and it will take you to where you needed to get to. The other stuff around you was left a mystery. And that's again coming into how everything is linked. Even though everything's separated by portals, everything is connected within Neyyah. It's very open world and non-linear in that sense, but the game was going to be so non-linear right from the get-go. Ideas came in to limit the player where they could get to first. And the beauty of this is that it enabled me to kind of step outside of the world, the game world, and see it as a game. I've played so many games in the past, but I'm not the biggest gamer. Like, I am not the... I'm not playing thousands and thousands of games. I'm not playing games every day. I've played games like Desperados, Wanted Dead or Alive, Might and Magic 7, For Blood and Honor, Tomb Raider. I've played so many different genres, even Need for Speed and games like that. But for me, Neyyah was about designing a world for people to explore, and so the game elements, while influenced maybe visually, were never really... certain gameplay elements were never really considered. The fun part for me was kind of taking a step back from that world that I was designing and making it more of a game. And so I was able to look at certain extra puzzle ideas, pulling from the story and then adding extra kind of, I guess, restrictions, I suppose, but puzzles mainly for the player to kind of come across. And so that helped shape the game to what it is now and made it more, I think, appealing as a game. That's for sure. I think by the time, though, certain things were added and we were getting closer to launch, the efforts were kind of lost when looking at how certain information was conveyed to the player. Those elements could have definitely had a lot more work. But it was fun writing the journals and writing all the notes. And it was a hard one for me to kind of come up with the measurement of how hard can I make these puzzles? How much information should I give the player? Because I know that certain games are just way too difficult and they switch off and they never finish them because they're so difficult. I wanted the player to be able to complete Neyyah, and I could have made the game a lot harder than it was, that's for sure. But I think I could have also told less and definitely shown more to be able to get the game to get the game more, I guess you could say, more perfect standard. But I don't think there's such a thing as perfect. Then the game is the game at the end of the day. You work on art, and be it music, writing, game design, anything. The work is never finished, it's always abandoned. You can always go back to it, I suppose, and keep working at it, but at some point you just need to let it go. And I am so pleased on how Neyyah's done. It's amazing. The way it's been received, the feedback has been amazing, and it's been enlightening as well. And just being able to watch people play it has been fantastic. But definitely for me, Neyyah was always a world before it became a game. But it had to be a game. And I really do want to go into a few more details about certain areas of the game that you could do more things. But they were taken out due to the fact that they were going to be too distracting and pull away from the avenues that the player was going to go down in order to finish the game. And that's how the whole reason why the Traveler's Guide became a thing, because the elements of the game that were very overwhelming were, you know, too numerous to count, really. The Traveler's Guide definitely, I think, saved the game in a lot of ways, but it definitely made it more of a game. I just love talking about how, you know, with Neyyah it was always a world, and there was literally going to be barely any interface. It was going to be very, you know, restricted, and, you know, just you exploring a world, and you're really going to make your own notes. But then there's so many things that made it a game after that. It was like the Traveler's Guide, the journey modes, for example, which journey modes were originally going to it was actually going to be a feature in the game, an option where you could have more animations, so like climbing up ladders and going down stairs and even moving maybe down slopes and stuff, but there was just too many to render that it scrapped it. So then journey modes became the whole game option of how difficult you wanted to make it. But I just wanted to reflect on that from a designer's perspective, because, you know, when you're the player and you're picking up Neyyah for the first time and it's a game, then you're expecting these things, and maybe possibly expecting more, or how things should have been done in a different way. Well, for me, it was very much coming from a very different place from the beginning. Like, you know, the passion, and always will be, the passion will be designing worlds, developing the worlds, modeling them. And that's where my passion lies. Obviously with the music and the sound design and everything else, that's very arty. But I am definitely seeing how certain gameplay elements can improve things, and it's really fun at the moment, looking at certain avenues, especially for future projects, where things can be conveyed in different ways and gameplay taking a bit more of a front seat. So, but yeah, I think the main thing is always making sure that the world does come first, and story, and how story can be conveyed, the narrative, which is something definitely for me to consider more for other projects as well, how that is delivered, and maybe even building up upon that a little bit more as well. So yeah, thanks for watching this video, guys. It's a bit of a ramble for me, but I definitely want to elaborate on certain things. Elaborate. And yeah, I hope you have a lovely day. It's quite bright out there at the moment. It's a bit cold here in Scotland, which is hence why I've got my jacket on. I'm aiming to go out for a walk in a minute. But yeah, the sun's out. A bit cloudy. Not much blue sky. There was a bit of blue sky earlier, but it seems to have disappeared now. So yeah, might take the old brolly with me. But yeah, have a lovely day, evening, night, wherever you may be. And I'll catch you on the next video. Bye!